Hey, what's up guys? Icy Soul here for Icy Duelist, bringing you guys another beginner's guide to Yu-Gi-Oh video. In this video, we're going to talk about some of the slang and some of the terms that have been created by the Yu-Gi-Oh community, as well as some more official Konami terms that, will help you understand other players when playing the game, because Yu-Gi-Oh players kind of do have their own language, because the official terms kind of are a bit complicated and long. Players have kind of shortened them or come up with different terms for them to make them, easier to say and refer to when, talking about the game. So let's get into this. Moving on to common letter abbreviations. These are some abbreviations of cards and, things in the game and the community. So MST stands for the spell card Mystical Space Typhoon. BLS stands for the monster card Blackluster Soldier Envoy of the Beginning. BTH stands for the trap card Bottomless Trap Hole. COTH stands for the trap card Call of the Haunted. ATK, of course, stands for attack points, and DEF stands for defense points. This is something that the 5D's official tutorial covered. LP, of course, is the official abbreviation for life points. EFF, which you will see a lot on online duel simulators, especially Dueling Network, stands for effect. People will often type this with a question mark if to ask you if they are allowed to activate a card effect, or especially a monster effect, and if you had anything to respond to with that, you would say no, or if you didn't, you would say yes. So people will often ask you on Dueling Network EFF, and they'll put a question mark, and that means is it okay if I activate this effect? Do you have a response to me activating this effect? OTK is one turn kill. This is basically the act of wiping out all 8,000 of your opponent's life points in a single turn. There are various card combinations to do this, and I'll give you guys a link in the description of this video to go check out a playlist by YouTuber GalacticGod, where he talks about some of the OTKs that have been in the past that have since been kind of outdated, or cards have been banned so they can't be done anymore, or or the combo just isn't as viable today as it was back then. But he has a whole playlist of videos dedicated to showing you different OTKs of the past, and I'll link that in the description. It's something you should definitely check out if you're interested in that. FTKs are the exact same thing as OTKs, except they happen in the player's first turn. An OTK can happen really any turn of the duel. But an FTK happens on a player's first turn. That first turn one of the duel, a player is able to wipe out all their opponent's life points and reduce all 8,000 of them to 0. So that's an FTK. GG is one you'll see a lot on online duel simulators. It means good game. Sometimes it's a sincere act of etiquette and sportsmanship to congratulate your opponent for and say good game. But other times I have seen players especially players who play win condition decks, those tier 0, just fail proof, just I can't lose kind of decks, and they say they will take like 1 or 2 turns and either like OTK or FTK you, and they'll say GG. And it's kind of used as an insult to players, who they pretty much completely wreck with those tier 0 decks. So don't be that guy. Don't be that guy who says GG after running a tier 0 deck. It's better for everybody if you're not that guy. YCS is one you'll hear a lot, especially in competitive play. YCS is the Yu-Gi-Oh! Championship Series. This is a special tournament held by Konami. And they have, I believe it's one every month in a different city across the U.S., I believe. and they have one every month. And not only do they have a tournament, but it's kind of like a Yu-Gi-Oh convention a little bit, like, because they not only do they have a Yu-Gi-Oh tournament, but they have like a big Yu-Gi-Oh tournament, but they have other cool, fun public events too. You know, to attend if you're a fan of Yu-Gi-Oh. So that's what a YCS is. YGO, of course, stands for the game we all know and love, Yu-Gi-Oh. ARG is Ultra Reality Games. This is a online blog that covers a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh product releases and Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments. You know, and they'll often provide streaming content from these tournaments as well. So whenever you hear somebody talking about ARG, they're talking about, you know, the online Yu-Gi-Oh blog. It's like a really big, popular Yu-Gi-Oh blog that's like, you know, pretty well established. TCG stands for Trading Card Game. And, you know, you may think that Yu-Gi-Oh as a whole is referred to the TCG, but that is actually not the case. TCG stands for the American and European Official Yu-Gi-Oh Cards, Rules, and Ban List. Because believe it or not, it's a different thing over in the Asian countries. And that's what the OCG is. The Official Card Game is what you'll hear people refer to as OCG. And this is the Asian, talking like, you know, Japan, like China, Korea, you know, some of the Asian countries. That's their official Yu-Gi-Oh cards, rules, and ban list. Because believe it or not, they are a bit different. The OCG has some cards that the TCG doesn't have. TCG has some cards the OCG doesn't have. The ban lists for both the TCG and the OCG are often completely different. Cards that are forbidden in TCG are not forbidden in OCG, and some cards are forbidden in OCG that are fully legal in TCG. So, you know, they're kind of like two separate games running simultaneously with each other. But they're both Yu-Gi-Oh! So moving on, we have OP, which is overpowered. If you're a gamer, you'll probably hear this a lot in other contexts too. But yeah, we do have OP in the game because some stuff is pretty overpowered in the game. Now, these next two aren't really like super popular, but I use them a lot in my videos, so you know, if you know these, then you'll probably know what I'm talking about specifically. But DMG stands for the monster Dark Magician Girl, and IFL stands for the monster Injection Fairy Lily. These are two monsters that I love to run, and I run them so much, and I use them so much that I figured it'd be a pretty good idea to put them on here, because, you know, if you want to watch my videos and I keep saying these letters, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So that's that. Moving on to other abbreviations. These are some of the monster abbreviations. Monster and, you know, yeah, I'm pretty sure all of these are monsters. So you have Valor, which is Effect Valor. Trag, which is Tragodia. Tengu, which is Reborn Tengu. Trish is Trishula, Dragon of the Ice Barrier. Reborn, of course, is Monster Reborn. That's a spell card. So far as I can see, the rest of these are monsters except for that one. Torguide is Torguide from the Underworld. Gors is Gors, the Emissary of Darkness. Goyo is Goyo Guardian. Stardust is Stardust Dragon. And Quasar is Shooting Quasar Dragon. So those are some monster abbreviations with the exception of Reborn, because Monster Reborn is a spell card, but the rest of those are monsters in the game. So these are common popular monsters that people like to use, and they use them so much that they have abbreviations for them. So we're done with abbreviations. Moving on to common vocabulary. This is kind of like the biggest part you need to know, and there's a lot of these. I don't even know how many slides. I have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 slides worth of common vocabulary to get through. So let's get through it. Meta is the dominant competitive decks and strategies of any given format. So like the tier, sometimes the tier 2 is considered part of the meta, but like from tier 2 to tier 1 pretty much is what people think of when you say meta. And of course, I said the word format. What's a format? Well, format is the time in which any given ban list is in effect. And I'm sure you know what a ban list is, but if you don't, I'll go over it anyway. A ban list is the official list of cards from Konami that are restricted or not allowed to be played entirely. The ban list changes every 3 months, and it can be referenced on the Konami Yu-Gi-Oh website. If you literally type in Yu-Gi-Oh ban list into Google, you'll find the link to the Yu-Gi-Oh official website where you can find the ban list and find out what cards are forbidden, limited, and semi-limited, and also unbanned. So, you know, what does that mean? Well, forbidden are cards you are not allowed to use at all, legally at least, in your main deck, extra deck, or side deck. Of course, if you're playing with a friend in casual TCG play and you neither player minds, you can go ahead and you know, play those cards. Of course, limited is cards you are legally allowed to have 1 copy of in your main, extra, or side decks, and no more. But of course, as with forbidden, if you're dueling casual play, casual TCG play, you know, both players are consenting to running cards that are limited, you know, more copies of the cards that are limited, that's fine too. And semi-limited are cards you are legally allowed to have 2 copies of and no more in your main, extra, or side decks. Of course, you can still play 3 copies if you want in casual TCG play, if both players are okay with that. Now, of course, you see that I've said to play 3 copies. Well, because this is something I really didn't cover in the deck building video, and I'm ashamed about it. But with any card, you know, any card that's not on the ban list, you are allowed to run no more than 3 copies of. Of course, you can reference the ban list for cards that are, you know, either forbidden, limited, or semi-limited, and what cards have since become unbanned or unlimited since the ban list has changed. They also have a section on the ban list dedicated to cards that were previously on the ban list but are now not on the ban list. So, you know, like the changes that occur in that. But yeah, no more than 3 copies of any card in a deck, unless, you know, it's on a forbidden, limited, or semi-limited basis. And in which case, it's even less copies of the card. Moving on, we have back row. And back row is just spells and traps that are present in the spell and trap card zones, whether they be face up or face down. That's all back row really is. Swing, smack, and poke kind of all mean the same thing. They're just used when declaring an attack. It's basically a synonymous term for attack. And the player will often make a motion with the monster they are attacking with in accompaniment of this term. So they'll either make like a nudging motion towards you or a monster. They'll like sometimes pick the monster up off the field and point it at the monster they're attacking to, or you, you know, to indicate that, you know, they are attacking. But they'll sometimes say, I swing, I smack, I poke for, you know, whatever the damage is. And that's that's generally a term that people use. Beater is a monster with high attack or a monster whose greatest asset is its attack. Now, of course, if a monster has high attack, it's generally considered about over 2,000 attack would be considered high attack in this game. But a monster whose greatest asset is its attack, that can qualify it as a beater. Really, I guess when it comes to that, being that its attack being its greatest asset, it kind of varies from player to player what the minimum threshold of a beater is. For me personally, I consider a monster whose greatest asset is its attack to be at least 1,500 attack points for, you know, it to be considered a beater, but you can form your own opinion on that. Run over means to destroy a monster by attacking it. Simple enough. Piercing is actually a term that the players initially created, but Konami has since made it into an official term because it was used so much. Because beforehand they did have like cards that did this, but they had a more long, drawn-out explanation of what actually happened. But now they just use this term when referring to it, and I think it's a lot better. But piercing, or, you know, the word pierce, means to deal the difference in a monster's higher attack and the opponent's monster's lower defense as damage. Because like normally, as you saw in the 5Ds tutorial, if your monster has higher attack and it's attacking your opponent's monster that has lower defense than your attack, or lower defense points than your attack points, then the monster is destroyed, but the player still doesn't take damage. In a case where a monster or a card effect allows a monster to have piercing, that doesn't matter. Your opponent will still take damage equal to the difference in the 2 points, the attack and defense points. So it's an exception, to that rule. But like I said, this is printed on some cards, some newer cards now, to officially declare that the card has this effect. Moving on, we have a team. Now, a team can consist of 2 or more friends that play Yu-Gi-Oh! Together, usually on a competitive level, that share cards and advice with each other. So you don't have to be in a team if you want to play competitively, but it is quite fun to be in a team, or even create your own team with your friends. Just a fun little neat thing to do. Hand traps are monsters whose effect activates in the hand and can be chained in response to a card played by the opposing player. Some good examples of hand traps that exist in the game right now are Effect Veiler and Honest, are 2 monsters that have pretty good effects that activate in the hand and are chained in response to a card being played. So there's actually 2 meanings for the word dropped, and they vary depending on what you're talking about. So when you're talking about the game, in relation to the game, to drop or dropped means to special summon a monster from your hand, and that's all that means. Like when you use Tragodia's effect, it drops onto the field. It's special summoned from your hand to the field. So that's what you consider that you dropped Tragodia. But when you're talking about tournaments, the word drop or dropped means to quit a tournament prematurely before officially losing. It's basically the point where you say, screw it, I'm done, I give up, and you quit the tournament. You drop the tournament. Please don't drop tournaments. Believe in the heart of the cards. So, locals are small, casual tournaments held in local card shops. They generally have like a laid-back attitude about the game. Some tournaments don't care about the ban list. Some locals, some locals don't care about the ban list. Some locals don't care if you use fake cards. It kind of really all depends on how prestigious the card shop is, and how connected they are with their player base, and basically kind of every kind of local has their own rules and their own guidelines and stuff, but it's usually a more casual experience, and it's definitely not like high stakes like it is with the bigger tournaments. Usually, like the prizes for locals are generally like a card, like a rare card found in the latest expansion set or something like that. Something that you could easily buy on your own. That's not gonna be like super rare to get. But they it's you'll win packs or sometimes booster boxes, usually just readily available Yu-Gi-Oh! Product that the store already has in stock. That's what they give as prizes for tournaments at locals. And regionals are bigger, more serious tournaments that are really on the competitive level, that are held by Konami. And if you're interested in finding out about regionals, you can go to the Konami website, and they have all kinds of information about all the different kinds of tournaments on the official Yu-Gi-Oh! Website. So go and check that out if you are interested in being a competitive player. Moving on to more common vocabulary, we have bounce, and this is when a card goes from the field back to your hand. Cards like Compulsory Evacuation Device are, cards that bounce cards back to the hand. Scoop is the act of surrendering a duel, and it's usually accompanied by a physical motion of the player placing their palm over their deck in TCG play, or even an online In online simulators, you would sometimes even click on the deck to surrender. And yeah, it's basically when you surrender, of course, you give your opponent the victory, and you've basically called that you've lost the duel, and you give your opponent the win. So sack is the act of drawing and playing a really good card that turns the tide of a duel in your favor and leads to a victory. If you are down in life points and down on field advantage, and your opponent is just beating you into the ground, and then you draw that Blackluster Soldier, and you are able to summon it, and you totally come back from out of nowhere and just win the duel, that would be considered sacking your opponent. Your opponent just got sacked because you drew into your Blackluster Soldier and just played it and just totally screwed them over and won the duel. So that would be what a sack is. Top means to reach the finals of a Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournament. I misspelled tournament, my bad. So that's basically all that is. A scrub, which I was actually surprised to hear is actually referenced in the actual Yu-Gi-Oh! Animes, but a scrub is a player who's just not good at the game, and 9 times out of 10 it's used as an insult to the player, and players will go to great lengths to avoid being called scrubs. It's like probably one of the most offensive things to be called in this game. Salty is one you'll hear a lot. Salty is the act of getting upset, angry, and or rude about the duel during or after the duel. And I hear the lore behind this was a player at the Salt Lake City Regionals one year, who was, I guess, in the finals, lost, and he just got really upset and threw a tantrum and stuff, and it was a really big bad thing. But since that player got so upset and angry at the Salt Lake City Regionals, and it being in Salt Lake City, that's why we call the act of getting upset, angry, or rude about duels called getting salty. And you'll see so many people joking about it, and talking about bring in the salt trucks and dump the salt all over the playmat. That's basically people saying, oh, the player's getting upset and agitated and angry about the duel, and how it's turning out for them. So to scrub out means to suffer a bad win-loss ratio at a tournament, causing you to lose before you reach the finals. That's really all I'll just say about that. Moving on, we have misplay. Now, misplay is when you misunderstand a card effect and play it in the wrong way, or you accidentally play a card you didn't intend to play. And this happens quite a lot. It happens to pretty much every player in the game, so don't feel bad if you read a card wrong or wanted to play your shadow spell when you accidentally played a set MST. Don't get too upset about it. Everybody misplays a few times, so it's a common thing that happens in the game. So a floater is a monster that's effect keeps recycling the monster back into the game whenever it leaves the field. Madolche cards are pretty well-known floaters. They keep just recycling over and over and over back into the game. So burn is effect damage as opposed to battle damage. So, for example, a card that has burn damage would be Marshmallow. When it's flipped face up after being face down, your opponent, it deals 1,000 damage to your opponent. That's considered burn damage because it happens by way of a card effect rather than attacking. So that's what burn is. Mill, just like in most other card games, means to send cards from the top of your deck to the graveyard by way of a card effect. Light Swarms are really well known for their milling and how it kind of helps the deck. Dead cards are cards that are present in your hand, but ones you do not meet the requirements to play. For example, if you had a Allure of Darkness in your hand, but had no dark monsters to banish to actually activate Allure of Darkness, that Allure of Darkness is going to be a dead card for you. You can't play it. You don't meet the requirements on the card to activate it. So it's just sitting in your hand, taking up hand space, and it's not doing anything, and it's not helping you. And that's when dumping comes into play. And dumping is the act of a player purposefully sending their own cards to the graveyard by way of a card effect, usually. And you're gonna want to dump your dead cards into the graveyard. If cards are in your hand and they're not helping you, they're dead cards. Dump them in the graveyard. And a little bit of a tip for you guys. Moving on, we have Excavate. Now, Excavate is kind of a new official mechanic that was introduced with the Sylvan archetype back near the end of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal life cycle, and it means to reveal the top card of your deck by way of a card effect. So it's not like milling where you send cards to the graveyard from the top of your deck. In Excavate, when a card asks you to excavate, it just means to reveal those cards to your opponent and show them, basically. Boss monsters are very powerful monsters. Basically, it's the best way to describe them. And most boss monsters are also considered beaters. A wall is a strong defense to your life points by way of a card effect, attack points, or defense points. If your opponent has a hard time getting to your life points to, reduce them to 0, then you've built a pretty good wall. Just, strong defense to your life points. So, search is to look for a card in your main deck and use it by way of a card effect. There's also, when referring to card effects that actually do this, cards that have an effect to do this are called searchers. So, synonymous kind of term there. Pop means to destroy a card. Simple as that. It doesn't matter if it's by attack or a card effect, whatever. Just if a card is destroyed on the field, then it's popped. Moving on, 2 slides to go, guys. We're almost at the end. Patrick Hoban, when you're actually talking about the card, actually there's no card actually called Patrick Hoban. What people are referring to when they say Patrick Hoban is the spell card Upstart Goblin. And the reason why it's called Patrick Hoban is there's a professional Yu-Gi-Oh! Player in the competitive scene whose name is Patrick Hoban, who actually helped make this card popular. It wasn't actually a really popular card in competitive play at all until Patrick Hoban used it in his main deck and started beating people with it. He started winning events with Upstart Goblin, so his name became synonymous with Upstart Goblin. And so if you hear somebody say, "Oh, I'm running 3 Hobans or 3 Patrick Hobans," you'll know they're talking about Upstart Goblin. Crash means to purposefully attack a stronger monster with a weaker monster, causing the weaker monster to be destroyed in order to activate a card effect. So, for example, if they had something like a Blue Eyes White Dragon on board, and I attacked into their Blue Eyes White Dragon with something like a Sangan, who has way less attack points. The Sangan would be destroyed, but I would get its effect. That means I crashed Sangan into Blue Eyes White Dragon. One that's not actually on here that I just said that I should probably tell you guys before I forget is on board, which basically means on the field. I know I've been saying that a lot, and I haven't given an explanation, but that's pretty much what it means. It's for something to be on the field. On, the field, either your field or your opponent's field, basically. Run, another one I've been using a lot, means to include a card in your main, extra, or side deck. That's pretty much all that means. To main is to include a card in your main deck, and to side means to include a card in your side deck. Simple enough. Siding in or out is the process of exchanging main deck and side deck cards between each other in between duels in a match. And of course, as we said before, a match is consistent of 3 consecutive duels in a row between the same opponents. And the last slide I have for you guys is plus X, X being any number, usually 1, is an indicator for how many more cards you have at your immediate disposal than your opponent. It's, when referring to card advantage, we talk about +1, +2, +3. It basically means having more cards than your opponent, basically. Round X should be pretty self-explanatory, but it's usually X being any number between 1 and 16, usually, is the specific round of a tournament. Simple enough. And finally, the last point I have for you guys is no fear. The act of making a risky play that could put you at a disadvantage if the play's execution fails. Like, for example, in my Crazy Box duel that you saw, I said, like, no fear, and that means that I was just rolling for Crazy Box's effect, rolling the dice, and if I rolled something like a 6, that could potentially destroy Crazy Box, and that would be really bad for me. That would put me at a disadvantage. But if I rolled something like, I believe it was like, one of the other, I forget what number it was one of the other numbers, it would like half my opponent's life points or destroy their cards, so, it's a really risky play to make, but if it works, it's really, really good, and if it doesn't, it's really, really bad. So, that's all the vocabulary and stuff I have for you guys. I'm sorry this was like so long, it's like going on 31 minutes now, jeez. But I hope you guys now know everything, about, the common vocabulary and common abbreviations in Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm sure I left some out. I'm almost positive I left some out. But if you guys in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Community who happen to watch this know of anyone that I missed, make sure you leave them down below for all the new players coming into the game. And I guess that's it. As always, Icy Soul for Icy Duelist, signing out.